Today is September 12th, 2019. Welcome to Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting. I now call this meeting to order. Greg, has the adequate notice was given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 4th, 2019. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 4th, 2019. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 4th, 2019.
Thank you. Now, Maureen Kelly from the Environmental Committee, who is the youngest member in the audience, is going to lead us with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, everybody. And before we get into roll call, yesterday was September 11th. Today is September 12th, and I would like to invite you and take a moment of silence for the heroes of 9/11. Thank you. Now, Greg, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Here.
Mr. Ritter? Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Here.
Mayor Selin?
Here.
Mr. Ritter did let us know ahead of time that he would be unavailable this evening.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we know that. And the approval of agenda, that's the item on the agenda, next item. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Anyone second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so agenda is approved. Now we have a proclamation on the agenda that has to do with Suicide Prevention Month. And I'm going to read it very quickly. Bear with me for the next couple of minutes. American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Month. Whereas the Township of Chatham is committed to increasing awareness of suicide prevention and wishes to recognize the importance of suicide awareness in our community. Whereas suicide claims nearly 45,000 lives in the United States each year, with someone dying by suicide every 12.8 minutes. It is now the 11th leading cause of death in New Jersey. Whereas a suicide attempt is made every minute of every day, resulting in nearly 1 million attempts made annually. Whereas the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is a multifaceted organization made up of esteemed scientists, dedicated survivors of suicide loss, people with mental disorders and their families, and an expansive network of business and community leaders. Whereas the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is at once a great grassroots movement, a support network, an educator, a professional research organization, and a grant-making foundation that organizes hundreds of events in communities across the country, raising millions of dollars each year to support its network for locally and nationally. Whereas the Township of Chatham lends its support and encourages its residents to participate in the 4th annual Out of Darkness Walk being held on Saturday, September 21st at 4:30 p.m. at Cougar Field in Chatham Township. This annual event has attracted hundreds of walkers from around New Jersey and has raised nearly $250,000 for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Residents can learn more and register at www.afsp.org/ChathamTWP. Whereas the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention remains an advocate for social change, supporting policies that contribute to reducing and preventing suicides nationwide and encouraging all individuals who may be in crisis to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, 8255. Now, therefore, I, Typhoon Salem, do hereby proclaim the month of September in the Township of Chatham as American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Month. Thank you. Okay, so, and Kurt Ritter, our committeeman, who's not here today, he's the leader on this in our committee and in our town, and I want to thank him for doing this. All right, so we're going to jump to the reports. Let's start from the committee. Karen, any reports?
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple of things we want to point out. Later on in the month, our community liaison from JCP&L will be joining us to discuss matters of reliability to the grid and work that they are doing. We all have questions every time we see the lights go out. So Mrs. Carol Bianchi, the Honorable Carol Bianchi, will be here. That will be at our next meeting. In the meantime, we have received word from Jersey Central Power and Light that they are installing 1,700 what they call trip saver automated reclosing devices on power lines throughout their service area. Chatham Township will be the beneficiary of several of those trip saver automated reclosing devices. They are designed specifically to close off a circuit and reopen it within a matter of seconds when they have certain kinds of power interruption. So of the 1,700, for those who think that Chatham Township is the redheaded stepchild of the Jersey Central Power and Light Service area, that could not be further from the truth. It's part of a $97 million reliability infrastructure investment that they're making. We've seen, certainly you can't drive around town without taking a look at the number of ash trees that sadly have to come down because of the potential infestation of the emerald ash borer and the impact it would have to our power lines and our electricity service. So we will be more forthcoming with the trip saver device installation going forward. We're going to be getting more information on that as the days go by. We will be putting it up on the website and on our various social media platforms. So keep an eye out for that. It's important for many of us who have experienced very aggravating power outages in the past. Let's see, additionally, we've had talk lately about goals, long-term, short-term goals, intermediate-term goals here in Chatham Township. One thing that we have been discussing for a couple of years now is how to honor the veterans in our community over the course of many conflicts and wars, in war and in peace, those who have so bravely worn the uniform of our armed forces, who have given the last full measure, whose families have sacrificed. So we're in the process now of really getting down to brass tacks to identify a spot here in Chatham Township for a Veterans Memorial. We are going to bring in a grassroots committee of advisory capacity. We're going to be discussing with our with our American Legion chapter, and we look forward to hearing from input that any of you may have as well. You're free to contact me. Certainly, Mr. Hoffman will be talking about various spots throughout the township where we may already have a good amount of foot traffic and where it would be an appropriate place to honor our armed forces. So that's something that we aim to look at in all earnestness going forward. And of course, you know, we're going to be doing some fundraising out of our citizens, those who want to honor loved ones, those who want to honor those of us who have remembered dearly people who have gone before us defending our freedoms. And speaking of defending our freedoms, thank you for recognizing 9/11, the 18th anniversary of the horrific attack on America. Certainly, we can't drive around town, once again, without seeing the homes of families who have lost their dads right here in the Chathams. And these kids are all kind of grown up now, and we've seen a lot of them thrive and flourish before our very eyes. But the tragedy of that day is always going to be with us. The unity that we once felt that somehow has subsided, the lack of a inter-town rivalry and acrimony among many of us, I think, has replaced a sense of unity, and that's a tragedy in and of itself. We dare not say that they won. We know that we as Americans will always strive for nobility, we'll strive for the upper hand when it comes to honor and our freedoms, and that's what I have to say. Those are my reports.
Thank you, Karen, appreciate it. And Tracy?
Chatham Recreation met to go over fall sports. I was unable to make the initial meeting because I had a conflict with the Environmental Commission meeting, but I did request a copy of their 2018 report. And in 2018, across all programs, sports participation was up by 2.7%, from 6,587 to 6,764. That was across all programs. Soccer is the largest, with a little more than 1,800 participants for spring and fall. Basketball was next at 990, lacrosse at 943, and baseball for 748. Interestingly, Chatham Borough has put together their own rec advisory committee for the borough. The purpose of that is not to separate from the joint recreation program, but to look at their parks and their fields and their tennis courts and have a citizens advisory group that encompasses both seniors and youth coaches and look at better ways of utilizing their park spaces. So if anybody hears that there's a Chatham Borough Recreation Advisory Committee, don't get panicked. It's separate from what's done with the joint rec and the sports programs. And at some point we'll have to consider looking at what we're going to do here, and with the same goal of revitalizing or looking at veterans parks or memorials, or looking holistically at all the lands and the field space that we have to try and put them to their best use, to make repairs, make improvements. So they've already gone ahead and done that. Colony Pool, we met informally over the Saturday of Labor Day weekend and had a very enjoyable time with the Colony Pool Committee. We want to give big thanks to Lauren, Al, Maddie, and all of the staff for a safe and successful summer. I haven't pulled the numbers since the last meeting, but we're up about 9%. From 394 or to 394 from 363. That's as of mid-August. I met with Bob and Rich, and they've walked the grounds, and we'll be making some improvements in terms of aerating and seeding. Hopefully we'll get the sprinkler system repaired this year, and looking at the macadam that runs around the property to do repairs to the macadam around the property. And Bob had a great suggestion of connecting the macadams and making a walking trail around Colony Pool. So that's kind of a nice idea. So we're in the process of walking, looking, seeing what needs to be done, what we can do with the limited funds that are available. And then the committee is also looking at doing a survey. We have a first draft of a survey that'll go to all of the members, asking them about their intention to renew, asking them about whether the reduced fees influence their decision to join Colony Pool, about the facilities, and just to get some feedback. I think the last survey was done in 2013, so this will be a good snapshot into the current membership, especially since we have so many new families, to see where they're going and what they see the needs are for Colony Pool. Rolling Knolls, the next meeting will be September 23rd. It will be in Harding. That is the Public Community Advisory Group meeting. There is a community advisory group that meets, and then all are welcome to attend to hear what's the next step with the Rolling Knolls Superfund site. The Environmental Committee met Tuesday, and the Sustainability Fair is this Saturday. It will be in the farmers market, adjacent to the farmers market, and it's from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. The Chatham the Township Environmental Commission will have a booth there. There will be games for kids. You can finally get some of your answers for your recycling questions. What cap can go, what lid can go, what size yogurt container can go. And there's going to be all different areas of the sustainability fair, so that you're going to, there's also going to be a way through each of the areas to make sure you hit the different areas. There's going to be someone from our Great Swamp Watershed Association, and there'll be activities for both adults and kids. So I encourage you to visit the Sustainability Fair of the Chathams. There's also the Great Swamp Fall Festival, Saturday at 10 a.m. So once you go to the Sustainability Festival, then you can go to the Great Swamp Fall Festival, which is always a terrific festival. The location of that is out at the Helen C. Fensky Visitor Center out in Basking Ridge. But it's a wonderful fall fair. So you have lots to do on Saturday. And then tonight, up for discussion and a possible ordinance will be the limitation on the single-use plastic bags. This is a follow-up to the presentation that the Environmental Committee made in June. We had some brief discussions on it then, and so that will be coming up as one of our discussion items tonight.
That's it. Thank you,
That's it.
Tracy. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Committeewoman Ness mentions how busy everyone can be on Saturday. I guess I'm going to start right in and say how busy everyone can be on Sunday. The community garden will be having its garden party on Sunday from 1 to 4 at the community garden off of Woodland Road in Chatham Borough, the combined Chatham Borough, Chatham Township Community Garden. 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and I'd like to extend that invitation to everybody on the Township Committee to come and everyone in the community. It's an opportunity for the people who have the plots at the garden to get together and socialize. But it's also an opportunity for anybody in the community to go down and check it out. Maybe think about next season if that's something they might want to do. Members of the community, the Township Committee, to see firsthand what it is that we support and offer to our citizens. So that's 1 until 4 o'clock this Sunday at the community garden. Partly overlapping with that is the Historic Society, also on Sunday at 2 o'clock, will be dedicating their most recent historical plaque. It's one of the programs of the Historical Society that gets the most recognition and the most support and appreciation are all of the historic plaques that you see around town, giving everyone little insights into what went on in that particular spot in years past. They will be dedicating their most recent plaque at the corner of Hampton Drive and Southern Boulevard, and the plaque will memorialize the saga of the jetport plan for the Great Swamp back in the 60s that, if it had gone forward, would have certainly totally changed our community as we know it now. So it's an opportunity to read the plaque and to socialize with the people on the Historic Society who can give you some real insights into what happened then and what it might have meant for our community. So that's the corner of Hampton Drive and Southern Boulevard at 2 o'clock this Sunday. And then looking farther afield, the Historical Society's next event, the next of their continuing series of presentations, will be on Sunday, September 29th, here in the community room here at town, at the municipal building. And the topic is the history of the tomato. So a little insight into the role the tomato has played in our history here in New Jersey. So that's 2 o'clock on Sunday the 29th. And Mayor, that's all
That's
I have.
it?
Can I just add one more thing? I know I have
Sure,
a lot,
go
but
ahead.
I forgot this. The Art League of the Chathams will be having their fall reception and exhibit on Friday night. So tomorrow night, starting at 6:30, and it's going to be featuring landscapes and plein air paintings. So everyone is invited. If no one has been to one of the receptions, it's really quite a lovely evening. There's lots of people that attend, and it's lovely to see all the artwork that's created.
That's it? Okay. Karen, I think you have something to add.
Yes.
Not to this, but
Just
you have
in
something
the-
else.
We'll just keep it cyclical,
Sure,
I
sure.
suppose.
As long as I'm out of this.
In our, we'll let you have the last word. In our event, our eagerness to discuss the Veterans Memorial, we've also talked about some perhaps 15 or 17 sites throughout Chatham Township, which we've discussed as pocket parks. It's come up briefly in a couple of our discussions. We saw what a great job our local landscapers have done in areas around the Board of Education. We have a beautiful park out here in our 9/11 memorial, but there are many spots throughout town, and we've talked with scout troops and other organizations about adopting a park. So we do have, I think it's 17, did we say about 17 sites that we have? And we're going to look to neighborhood organizations and other various community organizations to see who may be willing to get together and adopt a park and maintain it and perhaps beautify it and that sort of thing. So if anybody has an idea, you've identified a park in your neighborhood, you want to take a little bit of ownership to that, we certainly are willing to listen. And we'll be rolling out a list of those parks as we go forward over the next several weeks. So sorry about the last minute.
Okay, John.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one item I need to discuss is the Safe Routes to Schools for Lafayette. I mentioned that we need to have, I mentioned that the DOT was looking for a public hearing to be conducted, and I did forward them the minutes and documentation that we from meetings in the past, but they have come back and says, no, that we do have to schedule a public meeting. The meeting can be held during a committee meeting or it can be done independently. My experience has been having a meeting independently where you can put the boards on easels and around the room and people can walk around and you have that personal conversation during the night. It's a much better meeting than having something formal here with the board. So if the committee if it's acceptable to the committee, I'd just like to schedule that with Bob and just schedule that meeting within the next 2 to 3 weeks, just so we can keep that project moving along.
Okay.
Are you thinking an evening, daytime,
Evening.
maybe two in one day, or?
I'm thinking, well, we can certainly have 2 separate meetings. We can certainly have one during the day and then have one in the evening, just to kind of break it up and just, because they usually go quick. We can answer people's questions right away, and it's not going to be an all-night meeting. So, but certainly we can look at that, offer twice, and then have it in one evening.
Is this going to be for both for all the projects?
No, just for Lafayette. The other
Just one.
projects are not at that stage yet.
And where are we with the other projects?
The other projects we have we have 2 grants on Lafayette. The one is the 2016 grant award, and that one, the consultant was just approved by the DOT to proceed, and so that design work has just started. So I would hope that over the next couple of months, that will progress. The 2018 grant, the DOT is again offering design assistance for that grant program. They're behind on selecting their consultants that will be doing that work for them. So they're finalizing that program. Once that program is finalized, we select one of their 3 consultants, and we start the process on the third project.
Now, John, does that include the area around Colony Pool, the Spring Street sidewalk
Yeah,
as well? That's all.
Lafayette does, correct.
That's encompassing that.
Yes. And so we're going to send notices to all the property owners that are impacted, plus we'll put an ad in the publication in the paper of just the meetings are going to be held. So it'll be open to everyone, but we are going to send a personalized note to everyone that's impacted to come to the meeting.
Okay. Great. Good. Bob? Or maybe I'll start with Al this time. Albert, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to address 4 items that are on the agenda tonight, and I thought I'd address them all at one time and before there was a public comment so the public could understand what was being voted upon later on in the meeting. The items that I'm going to address are the introduction of the 2 ordinances that are affordable housing ordinances and the 2 resolutions that are also related to affordable housing. As you may remember, at the end of last year, in December of last year, the Township Committee approved a settlement with the Fair Share Housing Center, Inc., and in February of this year, the court approved that settlement. That settlement required that the township adopt certain ordinances or resolutions. This set of ordinances and resolutions I consider procedural and not substantive in nature. In fact, these ordinances and resolutions amend or revise or update existing ordinances or resolutions. They're not anything that is new to the township. Ordinance 2019-14 is a development fee ordinance. This affordable housing development fee ordinance amends the existing ordinance, an ordinance which was adopted by the Township Committee but never implemented, to conform with the Superior Court of New Jersey Order on Fairness and Preliminary Compliance hearing entered on February 22, 2019, and the Affordable Housing Settlement Agreement with the Fair Share Housing Center, Inc. The affordable housing development fee is collected from both residential and non-residential development. For the residential development, the fee is 1.5% of the equalized assessed value of the improvement, and for non-residential, the fee is 2.5% of the equalized assessed value of the improvement. Affordable housing development fee ordinances are placed in a segregated trust fund for the purpose of promoting affordable housing in the Township of Chatham. And expenditures from that fund are administered through a spending plan approved by the Township Committee and the Superior Court of New Jersey. The properties affected by the Affordable Housing Development Fee Ordinance are residential and non-residential properties which are being constructed or improved as described in the ordinance. That ordinance, if the pleasure of the Township Committee to introduce tonight, the public hearing would be on October 24, 2019. It is an ordinance that is referred to the Planning Board for review by the Planning Board and a master plan inconsistency determination. Ordinance 2019-15 is an affordable housing ordinance. The affordable housing ordinance was updated to conform to the Superior Court of New Jersey Order on Fairness and Preliminary Compliance hearing and the Affordable Housing Settlement Agreement. The Affordable Housing Ordinance governs the administration, marketing, income eligibility, renting and resale, and monitoring and reporting requirements for low and moderate income households within the Township of Chatham, including providing for a housing rehabilitation program, group homes, and a town-wide mandatory affordable housing set-aside. The set-aside is something new. It is not included in your existing affordable housing ordinance. The set-aside is applicable where there is a new multifamily or single-family attached residential development permitted by zoning or through variance at a gross density of 6 or more units to an acre. So for this ordinance to apply, it has to be 6 or more units to an acre have to be present. It has to be the result of either a zone change by the township or a use variance by the Board of Adjustment. When such rezoning occurs or variance granted, this ordinance requires a mandatory affordable housing set-aside of 20% of the new development. This ordinance also provides for a municipal housing liaison, which you've had, and the resolution further on, resolution 2019-175 is a resolution appointing the municipal housing liaison, and that it would be Mr. Hoffman as the town administrator. And this ordinance also provides for an administrative agent, and you've had an administrative agent, Piazza and Associates, which has the primary responsibility of dealing with the marketing and resale of the units at Vernon Grove. So this ordinance replaces the current ordinance with updated requirements. So as I said, for these two ordinances, they are essentially updates of things you've already done to make them consistent with the Affordable Housing Settlement Agreement. Resolution 2019-174 is an affirmative marketing plan for the affordable housing units, which means that the units have to be marketed to the public and made available to the public. And then the affordable housing agent that I just described to you, not Mr. Hoffman, but Piazza and Associates, qualifies those individuals for income eligibility and goes through the same process that a real estate agent would go to qualify someone for a unit, doing background checks, doing credit checks, things of that nature, confirming that the person is employed. So that is a requirement of the affordable housing regulations and also of your settlement agreement. And then Resolution 2019-175 is a resolution formally appointing Mr. Hoffman as the housing liaison, and in that position, he really has a coordination responsibility between the township, the administrator, and the affordable housing community. If you have any questions on those ordinances, I'm happy to address them, or resolutions.
We're good? You're good? Okay, done? Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And Bob, anything from you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 3 things to report on tonight. The first thing that I will report on is that we are in the middle of 3 days of unique mathematical history on the planet Earth. This is one of the 3 days of Panadrome days. So yesterday, today, and tomorrow, you can write 9, 12, 19 forwards or backwards, and it would be the same. So the next time this will happen is 92 years from now. So some of the Girl Scouts will be here, and the rest of the folks will be cryogenically available for that, but not anyway else. The other item that I wanted to report on that is of a more serious nature is that our zoning and our property maintenance ordinances do work. And I want to inform the Township Committee that there had been a case where we had a resident that had taken down more trees than they had the permit to take trees down for. The judge on Tuesday night at municipal court agreed to impose a fine of $10,000 on that property owner for that, and to approve the replanting of 4-inch caliber mature trees. So that's at a cost of $1,000 a tree. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our township engineer for assisting in the enforcement and for providing guidance to the prosecutor on some of the unique nuances of our ordinances, because our ordinances are not always clear, but they are accurate. And it took 5 months from the beginning to the end, but there was justice was served in this particular matter, and it also sends a message that our enforcement is fair, our enforcement is firm, and our enforcement has teeth. So there are some other folks that are out there. We hope that they abide by our ordinances, but we want to have compliance, but if we don't have compliance, we will have to go to the next step. But this is something that is significant. It's one of the largest penalties that has been levied. So that's item number 2. Item number 3 is at the next meeting on the 26th of October, we will be asking the Township Committee to amend an ordinance so that we are able to have electronic deposit for paychecks for all of our staff except for temporary employees. And this will just help make sure that when we have some of our summer staff that have checks right now, they don't get lost, they don't get washed by mom, they don't get left in the car, and we're doing a reconciliation nine months down the road, looking for why checks weren't posted. So that's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. And my report, I don't have a report. I just wanted to recognize 2 Girl Scout members attending this meeting. Thank you for coming to our meeting. And also I want to mention another tragedy just that we went through as a country. And just 2 weeks ago, we had this gigantic storm hurricane and hit mostly, not our country, but mostly the Bahamas and East Coast. And I'd like to send our prayers and thoughts from Chatham, our loves to those in Bahamas and the areas that were impacted by Dorian. And, I have a daughter in Florida. We were lucky that, we didn't get impacted at all, other than we had to pay 3 times for the airfare to get her here. So that was, that's not a big deal. So that's what I wanted to say. And now we are going to jump into hearing of citizens.
Mr. Mayor, normally I don't have reports, but since Mr. Ritter is not here, The Board of Health met on Tuesday, and I would just like to quick note that Board of Health President John Noctegal, after 17 years of service, has announced his resignation from the board. He was originally appointed back in 2003 to fill a vacancy. Subsequently, he was the board's vice president for a number of years before serving as board president for, I think, the past 5 years. And unfortunately, he's moving out of town, so he's no longer eligible to serve. But I just thought that was something worthy of notation, given his lengthy service to the township.
Yep, definitely we thank him for his service. Okay, so that's great. And hearing of citizens and petitions. So this is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and permit all to be heard, speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. So each speaker has 5 minutes. You can use up to 5 minutes. So anyone would like to come forward? Please introduce yourself and your address.
Good evening. My name is Rez Estevez on Southern Boulevard. Question. This proposed ordinance imposes new fees, and these new fees are actually rather punitive on homeowners. As I understand it, and there's a lot in there to digest, this would include improvements, which is to say renovations. So fellow neighbors who are homeowners understand that when you improve your bathroom, update your kitchen, that fee will be collected, and those contractors are going to pass it on to you. So this does amount to a fee, and it does amount to a punitive fee, and it punishes people upkeeping and improving their homes. I would expect that in a township committee comprised of at least 4 Republicans that would be in deep question and certainly challenged. I'm wondering whether, even if passed, let's make believe that indeed this township committee makes that mistake of passing this, does this new ordinance, would it have to be implemented, or can it be passed and the fee simply not collected? That is a question that I would appreciate a response to, please. If the township needs to consider the question further, of course, I don't expect it to always be on the spot, but I wanted to sort of get a first blush think on it.
Albert,
Thank you.
can you answer Ms. Estevez's question?
During my outline, I did indicate this was an amendment to an existing ordinance. This ordinance is required by the settlement agreement and by the court approval of that settlement agreement. It is atypical for a municipality that has an affordable housing obligation not to have an affordable housing development fee ordinance. This ordinance is set by statute. It is not set by the municipality. So it is not an arbitrary decision of the municipality. It is following the state law.
All noted, but it doesn't respond to the question at hand, which is whether it can be set aside.
Excuse me, if you would allow me to
I'd
complete
love
my
to hear you
answer,
out.
I'll get to that, okay? And when I said that this was an amendment to an existing ordinance, what occurred is the township has adopted a similar ordinance in the past, probably 10 or so years ago, and did not implement it. That was something that has been reconsidered as part of the settlement agreement, and that was agreed upon. So yes, the township has the ability to not implement the ordinance, but it would be in violation of the settlement agreement and the court order.
I would strongly urge the Township Committee to really contemplate the punitization of homeowners in our community, because that is a problem that arises. Further, with affordable housing, the development along Southern Boulevard, I'm deeply concerned that there's been a fail on the Township Committee in that it did not seek from DEP a 50-cent footback. We're losing a skate park and not experiencing the benefit of having that developed plot, that little chunk of land available to expand parking so that the quality of life in the township can be kept and still meet an aspect of this punitive and onerous affordable housing mandate. As is, there's not enough parking, so all of you who use Southern Boulevard understand that there will be one parking spot per unit, which is not really realistic. That means that there'll be overflow parking onto Southern Boulevard, increased pedestrian traffic, which is a public safety issue, a narrowing of Southern Boulevard along that corridor. That's more traffic. The whole thing is bad. And I would expect that in Chatham Township, where the behavior ordinarily is to do things right, we would go back and make sure that we do that right, because that not only affects the very real beautization of the town and maintaining the quality of town, but it's also a hardship on those to be residents in the township, to be restricted unduly and unrightly in that form. Mr. Hoffman, were you gesticulating to make a note?
Just that you had 2 more minutes.
Oh, message received. So I would be grateful to hear from I'm timing myself, by the way. I would be grateful to hear from the Township Committee any first blush response to that concern. Well,
Rez, as a member of the planning board, some of the information you give about that development is currently being heard before the planning board.
Yep.
And the ideal location might be for interested citizens to go there and see firsthand the level of examination and attention that the planning board is giving to it. Our next planning board meeting will be next Wednesday, the 18th. Some of the details that you gave were not entirely accurate, and the best place to really delve into that would be at that hearing, and when someone could ask a question and get the really first-class answers.
Right. I did attend the site visits, both at the plot adjacent to the police station as well as Dixie-Dale, and that really made very clear how very tight this development is being built. And it appears as though it's being built around this this pad, which will soon be the former skate park. And I don't know why the development is contorting so tightly around that pad and really creating something of a distortion in construction rather than enabling the building of a structure that rightly accommodates the intended purpose of affording a workable, affordable housing compliance position while not adversely impacting residents in the township. And I think all of us use Southern Boulevard to get to and fro within the township. With Shunpike, it's like one of the major thoroughfares here at home. So it's major.
And that plan before the planning board is definitely being grappled with and amended every time we work with the developer.
There'll be more amendments needed.
Mr. Kelly, this is pending before the planning board, and your initial response was the correct response, which is those questions should be directed to the planning board.
Okay.
Very good.
Well,
Thank you, Mr.
I'll
Secretary.
attend that as in prior planning board meetings.
Thank you. Next, please. Please state your name.
Yeah, Dan Miller, 465 Green Village Road, and I wasn't going to mention this, but I will. Mrs. Estevez is 100% correct, and I'll tell you why, okay? We were also sold a bill of goods for Oak Knoll over on Green Village Road, that there would be plenty of parking. Have any of you ever been there when there's a soccer game or any other event? They are up and down Green Village Road, and it is a hazard. And it has done many things to destroy our quality of life in Green Village. And I certainly hope that a road like Southern Boulevard, which is more traveled, okay, that we don't get sold the same bill of goods that the planning board decided to say, oh yeah, this was right. So Ms. Ezefez is 100% correct. Now, last meeting, about a month ago, I was here, and Typhoon, you weren't here. Mr. Kelly, you were acting mayor. I asked 2 questions. I was wondering if I had any answers to those 2 questions.
Could you repeat the question just to?
So that means no, or?
No,
No.
you had asked a question about fees from the Board of Health. That was one of the questions.
Yeah, that question was, who are people in these sewered areas paying for when paperwork is being processed in the form of tax collections and things like that directly, like us in the non-sewered areas are paying directly?
Yeah, and I didn't hit the send button on an email to you, so I will do that tomorrow with a full answer for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other question, which was about holding Morris County accountable for maintaining their properties, which I see there's been no movement on the Kirby property. I mean, maybe people will want to walk out there in the snow. I don't know anything about that, but that's just one of many. So what has been done, you know, I listened to Bob talk about, you know, going after people who cut down trees, and that our property maintenance ordinance has teeth. Well, it only has teeth depending on who owns the property. That's very clear, because it has no teeth when it comes to municipal or county or state properties whatsoever. And, you know, we can look at many of them. So, and when I wanted to have, you know, I had to go it alone rather than to see the teeth of our ordinance go after Morris County, who owns property next to my mom. So what's being done with the other properties in town?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Sure, please.
Bob, didn't you walk the properties with Dan?
No, John and I met with Mr. Miller, and we looked at drainage issues, and we, across the street from there, we looked at a couple of other areas. We did not specifically go on to the Kirby property, but one of the questions that Mr. Miller had is what is the follow-up, and you know the follow-up with the county has been slow. I have had a conversation with Assistant County Administrator about doing a better job maintaining the county easements in the township, but that's really all it is you know, I've had the conversation, and they've promised to do something, but we candidly, I have to follow up, and I haven't.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Greg, our clerk, at my request, did pull the original title and contract for the Kirby property. It's about a 48-page document with addendums and all attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does specify that it's to be mowed twice a year. It also specifies that it's to be maintained in its current condition as unused pasture and in a conservancy purpose. It stipulates a number of places what can and can't be done in terms of access and trails, and it's quite a legal document, and I spent a good amount of time reading it, but I would defer to a lawyer to really interpret the details of it. I don't know that we've kept track of whether it really has been mowed twice a year.
I
Certainly,
have.
If you have dates and specifics on that, maybe
Yeah, none.
that would help us.
It's pretty easy. Go look at the 8-foot-tall cattails.
No, I've driven by it, and it has been mowed in the past. So, I mean, if I don't have the information that would let me go to the county and say, you've been doing it once a year but not twice, you've been doing it twice a year this year, but you skipped, you know, you only did it once the next year, and any detailed information you had on that would be helpful.
Was not done at all this year. Okay, I can tell you that much.
And in terms of access onto the property, that is limited. It was purchased as a conservancy type of status. And I guess being the open space representative on the Township Committee, I would invite you to certainly take advantage of a number of the other very accessible open space properties in Myersville. There's the Green Village Pond Trails, which in fact there's an Eagle Scout project right now building some bridges back there that's going to even make those trails even more accessible and actually bring them around behind the Kirby property, which would accomplish something similar to what you're requesting. Also the Loantica trails, the county's Loantica trails over there that come into the Myersville section, the Green Village section of the township, and that are very well used and appreciated by people far and wide. So I hope that answers.
It doesn't. That's a very good plug for all the places that we have to go, but it still doesn't answer the question of why, especially when we talked about just tonight that there's teeth to our ordinances and there's teeth to the things that we put on paper, that everybody backs down when it's the county or when it's this. And once again, it's like I said, you just said it, it's to be maintained twice a year. Okay? So walking the Lewanica Trail or going back to Green Village Pond, Suiters Pond, for those of us who have been around for a long time. Doesn't, that's all well and good, and those are great places to go. And I would encourage everyone to come out to Green Village and enjoy it. But it doesn't do anything to answer the question of why are these properties not maintained? And it's not just the Kirby property, it's many, many others.
If I may, this is something that has to be followed up by me, so it doesn't make any sense to go back and forth about it, because there are some issues that Mr. Miller's identified. Some of the issues that Mr. Miller has identified are legitimate, and they have a couple of other components. So it's not just maintaining the property. There are some drainage issues, and there are some drainage issues in other locations of the township. But this is something that has to be followed up by me, and it doesn't, there's nothing that the township committee can do at the moment. So.
I appreciate you running cover,
No, I'm not.
Bob,
I'm not.
and I appreciate that you're going to go out and do that. I truly do. And and then for the next subject, and I will be brief because I cannot stay tonight, but I just want to remind everybody when we're looking at the plastic bag regulations, and I'd like to remind you all that I know we're working with other towns and doing all those kinds of things. Nick Platt and Harding Township has a very minimal business district where it impacts them extremely minimal. Chatham Borough has an extensive business district where if businesses come in and out, it's not going to impact Chatham Borough all that much. Things will come and go. Chatham Township does not have an extensive business district, and to limit certain things and to also expect the public to pick up the difference on those things really isn't a wise idea. I know some of you have been around and some people haven't, but where Ace Hardware is, that place went empty for many, many years. If we lose businesses because we overregulate, it could be detrimental to our town. And if you think your property taxes are high now, push out some of those businesses that we have in our small little business district, because Nick Platt in Harding Township wants to drive an ordinance. That's a problem, and to model ourselves on California, take a look at San Francisco and LA. I don't think we want to have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next, please.
Hi, Jessica Romeo, Pine Street. So 1999, I lost my mother to suicide just a few months after her 50th birthday, so thank you for the proclamation, and anyone who knows me knows that's an issue near and dear to my heart. I would hope that in the future, the township is a stigma-free community, but I think we can do a lot more with that. Someone who dealt with this my entire life, with a mom who suffered from depression and bipolar disorder. I think we could do a lot more in our community. Next topic, plastic bag ordinance. As a member of the Environmental Commission, we presented to you, I think it was June 27th, and it's an issue we've been working on for about 9-10 months now with other communities. None of this was taken lightly. We did a lot of research. We polled community members. We spoke to local businesses. We spoke to other towns that had passed legislation to see what worked, what didn't work, what the hiccups were, what they could have done better. I think we owe it to ourselves and our future generations to do what we can to minimize things like microplastics in our waterways, and it's just very timely. This came in my mailbox today, and it's all about the study the Great Swamp Watershed Association has done recently on microplastics in the Passaic. So that being said, I hope that you guys will consider what we as the Environmental Commission presented to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, Sandra Levine with Great Swamp Watershed Association. I was invited by the Environmental Commission just to say a few words about your plastic ban, which Great Swamp Watershed Association would very much support. Plastics, as I am the Director of Water Quality, the microplastic sampling has been my job and is currently what we're doing in the Great Swamp sampling right now. We are finding microplastics in all of the streams in the area. So everyone thinks about it as an ocean problem, as a problem that happens somewhere else. but it is very much present in our waters, in the Passaic River and the smaller tributary streams right here in Chatham and in the Great Swamp watershed. And it is not just an environmental issue, but it is going to become a health issue. Microplastics work their way up the food chain, and the plastics that are being consumed by the smaller organisms, which get consumed by the fish, which may or may not end up on your table, contain toxins that they're finding are leaching into the meat of the fish that contain them. So every step we can take, every small step we can take to protect the future and to reduce the amount of plastics that end up in our water. Plastic bags break down very easily in the weather as far as into smaller and smaller particles. They get blown around, they end up in our streams. They are by far the most common thing right after single-use plastic bottles that I find in the streams when I'm sampling and when I'm working with the students in the local high schools. So we support very much your ordinance on the plastic bag issue, and we thank you for considering it.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Ursula von Ridingsward from 59 Buxton Road, and I just wanted to thank you, Mayor Celine, for sending a shout out and condolences to the Bahamas. My daughter was also evacuated from Miami. Anyway, I am not here to convince you why plastic bags are terrible. I'm actually going to show you why I have these in the back of my car, and it's so easy to do. So I spent a good portion of my time in Connecticut over the summer, and they just banned plastic bags as of August 1st. So you go to the store, and they will charge you 10 cents per bag. And after you do that, maybe twice, you get wise. And you load up the back of your car with these. And honestly, these are all free. You know, you guys probably all have 10 Lululemon bags in your closet already, and this I got as some swaggy thing, some giveaway. So it isn't expensive at all. We all have these in our closet, and all you need to do is you put 10 of these in the back of your car, and you go shopping with them. That's it. And once you build up the habit, it's really not that big of a deal. So again, you gave the most amazing presentation on why plastics are horrible. And I'm here to tell you that this is just so easy. It's just a matter of building a habit. And it makes you feel good, too. My son is on the sailing team at the Chatham High School. He just joined the sailing team, and he sees just horrible stuff in the ocean. And I know it's not just the oceans, but, you know, let's do it for the younger generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, Richard Matlaga from 36 Dale Drive. My question is about trees. Committee person Schwartz talked about JCP&L and NGG Tree Service cutting down the trees. I, like you, thought they were cutting down ash trees. What they did on Dale Drive this past week is they've taken down 3 extraordinarily large oak trees from one piece of property. So if they are going to clear cut our streets, they will take down all the trees on Noe, all the trees on Lafayette. So my question is, how are we monitoring what they are cutting down, and can we hold off until they can present someone to the committee, as will be at the next meeting, and say, put a moratorium on it until they can explain what they're doing so we could save the trees in town?
Okay.
Can we do that?
Well, I, for one, Mr. Matlaga, really sadly do not know the difference between a lot of our different trees. I did not go around looking at which trees were coming down, although like you, it does look like a lot. When I see the pink stripes around the trees, and then I see the tree services working on the trees, my assumption is that they're ash trees that are coming down. Clearly, if you're saying they're not, then that's worth a lot of explanation on their part.
Stop by 55 Dale and talk
And
to
you're
the...
going to show me an oak tree.
There's
I suppose.
3 oak trees that were healthy. The homeowner was fertilizing them. They were good trees.
Well, now,
All
at the
three
end
are
of the day, the
gone.
homeowner does have the option to refuse the service.
She said she was not given
She
that.
was not notified.
No, they took them down. And it changes the character of that section of the street. And I think it's horrible. And since we heard about the fine for trees,
We'll
here
look
they're
into it.
coming through.
You have my word.
We should have, the town should monitor that.
I will absolutely look into it tomorrow.
And if they could hold off until they can make a presentation, so we know what they're doing.
If, my understanding is that the trees with the pink stripes around them are ash trees. If we find out they're not,
They're
we're
not.
going to ask why.
They're not.
Very good, sir.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you for bringing it to our attention. If you had done it earlier, we'd have gotten on it earlier.
Well, it was this past week. It took them a whole week
Very
to
good.
take down the trees.
All right.
So.
I will certainly get on it tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Next person, please.
Hi, Maureen Kelly, Mountain Avenue. The first thing I need to do is correct our administrator, Bob Hoffman, on his palindrome thing. It really started on 9/10/19, and it actually is a 10-day thing, not just a few days, so you can go look at the math. Because I happen to have seen that somewhere else, so I knew it goes on for like a 10-day thing.
I thought there was one day in between where it didn't work, but I sit corrected.
I want to speak in favor of the plastics ordinance. It's simply the right thing to do. We know that people just need to change their habits, and it's going to be fine. We'd certainly love it if the state of New Jersey did something for the whole state, like all of Connecticut and all of New York, and maybe they will. In the meantime, this is something we can do, and it's important, and we're setting a great example for our younger people. And, plastics are more dangerous than many of the other things that we think are dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, Julie Colehouse on 39 Dale. I just want to echo what Maureen has already put forth about the plastics and every other person who's talked about the plastics initiative. I think that it's going to happen. It would be great if it were more blanketed by the state level, but the reality is that I do all my shopping at ShopRite essentially, and they are in fact one of the oldest grocery store chains. Since 2012, they introduced the compostable bags, and they're there for 99 cents. I rarely see anyone take that because the plastic and the paper, which they do dual, they give you both a plastic bag, so single-use plastic and single-use paper, simultaneously, at the same time, they're selling a 99-cent bag. That's a mixed message. It's an issue of education. We know we're going to take free over something that we have to pay for, but as someone else already pointed out, we have all these bags in our closets from all these fancy stores that get used one time and then they just sit around. It took me, myself, knowing that I need to have a bag in the back of my car, and the trunk didn't work. I had to move it to the front seat at some point. I had to see that thing, otherwise I'm going in the store without it, say, I'll do it next time. It's an issue of education. It's an issue of just changing behavior, which we can all do that. I mean, nobody is stopped going from Costco. They've never offered a bag. People go there anyway. They don't care, even if they're going for one item. I want to go to Costco. I want to use my membership card. So these are things that are not insurmountable in any way. And I think it's going to happen, but it will be helpful if we can do it en masse because it'll happen faster. And we can jump on board and join the community that's already started this. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Kathy Abbott, Wynwood Road. I also support an ordinance that limits single-use plastic bags in Chatham Township. And I'm not sure exactly of the form that you're just going to be discussing of an ordinance, but it seems to me no one would be greatly suffering if stores were asked, like in other towns, to charge or regulated to charge 5 cents for every single-use brown bag that they give out, because all it does is create a market incentive to do the right thing and stop polluting the whole globe with plastic. And as you know, the local streams are polluted with microplastics, again, coming from lost plastic bags, discarded plastic of all kinds, and then it ends up in the ocean. And you can see it in other places more than you can around here, that plastic bags are just sort of taking over nature in many ways. And it's bad for our health, and of course it's bad for our children's health. And I have 2 Girl Scouts that are doing silver awards on environmental issues and chose it themselves. Not that, but they aren't my troop, but they did choose it for themselves. And so I believe each one wants to say just a tiny bit about what they're doing.
Each gets 5 minutes anyway.
Hi, I'm Meredith, my mom. So yeah, I decided to work on a project for my Silver Award that addresses environmental issues because that's something I'm very passionate about. And even though like you guys probably won't be affected so much in your lifetime about how we're going through like a lot of environmental issues right now, but definitely in my future I think we'll see more. So I'm focusing on stream testing with my mentor right over there with the Great Swamp. And so I just wanted to say I really support this issue and the ordinance that we're putting in place or may put in place for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Selena, and for my Silver Award, I chose to go to our schools and try to help eliminate plastic straws because a lot of people are going to be affected by it in the future. And I also support this ordinance that may be added to remove plastic straws.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi again. Rez Estevez from Southern Boulevard. I wasn't going to speak on the plastic bag question, but I see there's a lot of emotion behind it, and it seemed that it would be good to point out a few notes. First, I too am passionate about the environment to the point of dedicating 5 years of my life and gaining an environmental science degree from Rutgers University. And I also hail from a long line of sugarcane farmers, so land conservation, stewardship, and sustainable farming practices is something that is generations old in my family line. I'm not sure about this plastic bag ban, both from the conservation environmental point of view as much as a commercial one here in the township point of view. There are very many counterpoints indicating that the ban of these bags feels good, but it's not particularly effective, given that the alternative is to buy a thicker plastic bag at the supermarket, which many people will do. And P.S., I carry my own bags around to do my own shopping, and they're in my car right now, and I use them all the time, my famous bag of bags. So, I think there needs to be further actual fact findings so that we do something that not only feels good, but actually does do good. The other point from the commercial point of view is that here in Chatham Township, we have not that many industries. We have ShopRite, we have Ace, and then we have the business of renovation and construction in the township. And it seems that the movement of this township committee, and I am watching Republicans, the movement of this township committee is to take no opportunity to miss a chance to grab into people's pocket, and that's absolutely the wrong direction to take, and that's why I warned last time I would be watching, and I took action accordingly, and I will continue to be watching. So I expect the Republicans to not back this up. Thank you.
Mr. Matlaga, please.
Richard
introduce yourself.
Matlaga from Dale Drive. Just a comment. The plastic bags seem to have worked at the Jersey Shore over the summer, so who knows? The one comment I have, and it's more for Mr. Cruz, and I was going to wait till later, I'm not sure the time to bring it up, but will these ordinances about the affordable housing, 2 ordinances and the 2 resolutions, will that delay the project, or the planning board will go on its way and this will all merge down the way?
These are unrelated to the skate park site plan application pending before the planning board. These are procedural ordinances that apply generally, and they're unrelated to that. What is being referred to the planning board is for a determination that the ordinances are not inconsistent with the master plan.
Okay, thank you.
And just one other comment, the tree cutting by public utilities is regulated by the Board of Public Utilities. And the Board of Public Utilities has adopted an extensive set of regulations called Electric Utility Line Vegetation Management. You can Google that, New Jersey Electric Utility Line Vegetation Management for those regulations. They're found at NJAC 14:5-1 and following, and there is a specific regulation.
Boy, do you think I could write that fast?
This is all recorded, Mr. Matlaga.
And there's a specific regulation that deals with the removal of hazardous trees, NJSA 14:5-9.
I understand all that,
Okay.
except that at the end of the day, it's a subjective call. Because what is a canopy over a power line? And we could discuss this all night. And if you look at the trees that were taken down in front of 55 Dale, and I say go and look at what those homeowners went through, and then drive down Lafayette or Noe, and you could say, or even Dale Drive, you could say, I would take down the bulk of the trees because the canopy of the tree is over the wires. You could take down every tree in town, and you could justify it under those rules. All I'm saying is we need to find out what's reasonable. And I think that's the pressure of the township can do that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, Stacy Old, 54 Nicholson Drive. As some of you know, I've been knocking on doors, meeting people in the township. And the one complaint I hear a lot is the difference in terms of how it seems that homeowners, and maybe this is a perception, but how homeowners are treated versus how developers are treated. So for example, when we talk about putting teeth to trees coming down, which is awesome, you know, I've talked to people many times where they feel like they have to replace trees, they have to pay fees, and they don't get the sense that the developers are doing the same. And I remembered that somebody had come complaining because there was a situation down in Woodlawn where trees were cleared, fines were levied. And I guess I'm just wondering, is there a new sheriff in town and we're getting tougher on this, or is there really a disparity between how the developers are treated and how homeowners are treated?
If you want.
You've asked a two-part question, and there's perception and then there's reality. When there's a new development that comes in, usually they go to the zoning board of adjustment or to the planning board, and the developer has to submit a lot grading plan, has to submit a site plan, and there are trees that have to be planted. That's part of it. They're part of the confirming resolution. Part of the difference has to do with perception, because when they're planting the trees, they're not going to be mature right away, so it will take some time. So when new houses are going in, it's the inspections are being done based on what was approved at either the zoning board of adjustment or the planning board. When it comes to residents, usually they're coming in with requests to remove trees that are diseased, or there is some other issue. So it's more of a one-on-one meeting with the residents and going through and explaining the tree code. So I'm not sure if that
So I
answers your
guess
question.
the follow-up question would be is if you have a developer that takes it, because I think the situation you mentioned was a homeowner had a permit to take down trees, but they took down more than they were allowed. So similarly, if a developer has, gotten approval to take down certain trees, but then takes down more, we can presume that they would be fined similarly, and that wouldn't be alleviated by the courts, because I think there was a situation where, fees were waived for some woodlawn, penalties that were assessed. So, I'm just.
No, there are times when I can think of two instances where there was a field change made because it was found trees. There was an attempt to save some trees, but they were found to have diseases in the roots. So you let them take the tree down because it's going to be harder to take that tree down when the roots are decayed and you've got a new structure there. So I'm not sure how to answer your question. I think It's partially, it's customer service, and it's also perception, because.
Yeah, no, because it's not coming from me, it's coming from people that I talk to, so, thank you.
Well, can we be clear about the nature of the violation or the nature of the violator in the instance that you brought up, whether it's a homeowner or a developer? Whoever owns the property is the property owner. There's no discrimination between a developer and a person. As long as they're the property owner, they still have to do the right thing. They still have to do what's expected of them, apply for the permits and pay the fines if it must be. So whether it was a builder or an actual person who owns the home, they should be held to the same standard. I think that's, Mrs. Ewald, I think that's the question you had, whether we're holding homeowners to the same standards as, or whether we're holding developers to the same standard as homeowners. But when you're a property owner, you're a property owner.
Well, that would be true, but we do have to make a distinction, because when you're a property owner, we're basically dealing with an individual that owns one structure, but we look at the tree ordinance in that way. But there are also times where we're enforcing the plan that was adopted by one of our boards, and on those plans it specifically says these trees can be removed, and then trees have to be replanted. The trees that have to be replanted, that's at the end of the project, not in the middle. So.
All right, next person, please.
Hi, Sue Liggertwood, Heritage Drive. To Mrs. Ewald's question, their concern. I have questions regarding the Dixie-Dale property regarding the tree plan. They are proposing to take 300 to 400 trees down on that property and to replace them. And is it not, can the planning board not request the size of the tree to be replaced instead of just putting a sapling? Is that an understanding? I was told that that is a possibility, that the planning board can request the size of tree to be replaced, as a replacement.
Well, sitting here, I do not remember what the Dixie-Dale ordinance says, but there are two ordinances that would be in play that would, the planning board would look to, and that is the general tree removal ordinance in the municipality, and then any tree removal or tree planting requirements in the Dixie-Dale ordinance. So again, as was stated before, questions regarding what is occurring at Dixie-Dale and what is going to be approved there or not approved there should be directed to the planning board.
I guess, sir, my question though has to, in regard to, Dixie-Dale is a new development, as Mrs. Ewald referred to, as a development versus a personal homeowner. So that is what I'm asking as a municipality. Can not the planning board request a certain size tree for replacement as a municipality?
Well, I'm going to say
Okay.
two things about that. I'm going to ask Mr. Rushke to tell you what the ordinance provides, but the planning board has an ordinance that it is guided by.
So so developers have to have ordinances that are separate from the municipal rules and laws?
It's the same, Dixie-Dale has an ordinance particular to its property, and there's a general tree preservation ordinance in town. So you have to look to see what the property is and determine what ordinance applies. But in terms of the saplings, I think Mr. Rushke wants to say something. I think.
Sure. You have to put things in perspective, because we're when you talk about a developer, are we talking about a single-family home or a 55-unit town home complex that's several acres? I could say I can't speak for the issuing the permits, tree permits for individual properties. I don't issue those, but for the developers, the record speaks for itself. The developers are held to the letter of the law. All their applications are scrutinized to make sure that they comply with the tree ordinance. And in fact, if we do an inspection on the end, and if they do, we make sure every tree is still there, every tree wasn't damaged, and we enforce the protection of those trees. And if in fact, if a tree is removed and it was not approved to remove, then a summons is issued, because it's very clear, because I'm dealing with black and white blueprints that I can say that assessed very thoroughly. So, I think the record, if you go to the actual individual lock rating plans, the record speaks for itself regarding how we're enforcing it. And we are enforcing it very, very critically and making sure that it's addressed. When you go into a board, either a zoning board or a planning board, there is some discretion for the planning board to deviate from the ordinance, and that's their discretion. It's not the township committee. The ordinance is set, but for the Dixie Dale application, the developer did not count every tree. They are obligated to comply with the tree ordinance. They did not inventory every single tree, and they asked for that variance, and that's the discretion of the planning board to decide if that is appropriate or not. It's not a town-wide policy. It's a case-by-case basis, and like Mr. Cruz said, it's still being deliberated, but the planning board did raise a lot of concerns of trees and the amount of trees and the tree planting, and all that's being vented out at the planning board. The developer basically did a survey of a particular area, and then he prorated that for the entire site, and so that's how he presented it to the board. The board may or may not accept that, but again, that's a discretionary item from the board, and that is not uncommon to have some deviation from the code, because many times they're going to the board for a deviation. And so, again, the Dixie Dale is being vented with the planning board. Trees have been a concern. Many board members have raised concerns with trees, and it is being discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Eschke. I also have another question regarding that. Is this applicant required to give a tree plan? I was told by someone that they, as a developer, they are supposed to submit a tree plan. And when I came to the town, there had to Kathy at the construction department, she said there's not currently anything on the books regarding a tree plan.
They do have a planting plan, and I would recommend that if you go to the planning board and vent these concerns to the planning board, and then you can address those, with the board professionals, with the applicants, the professionals can address these very specific questions. They can pull out the plans, they can show you what's with it, and you can ask those direct questions. Those questions to the town committee, they're not overseeing that application. It's now in front of the planning board, and the planning board is regulating that. So if you have concerns of trees, it should be directed to the planning board, and you have all legitimate questions and concerns, but they need to be expressed to the planning board.
But sir, wouldn't that be available to the general public?
Oh, absolutely. You absolutely can go down to the land use department and review the plans. And Kathy is not an engineer. She's not a planner. She can show you the plans, but she may not be able to point out all the landscaping attributes of that application. So
If I might, John, just as a point of order, there was a significant delivery for the application on Friday. I guess that was September 6th, so there was...
there's some supplemental plans being reviewed, and the concerns, and that's not uncommon that during a planning board application, the board members and the professionals raise concerns and issues, and the applicants agree to make revisions to the plans. They make the revision of the plans, and then we revisit those plans. And so,
But Mr. Rusher, you said there was a landscaping plan.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you go to the planning board,
I've been going, sir. I've been going to the meetings, but I don't understand why those documents have not been able to be given to the public so that they can access them. I have gone to take the pictures of the drawings and all of the engineering plans and all that with Kathy, but I specifically asked her about a tree plan, and she could not provide me with one.
What is the best way for her to get the tree plan? That's really the question. I mean,
you can get my email address, and you can email me and ask the question. I'll scan it and I'll send it to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Next person, please.
Amy Mason, 48 Hilltop Terrace. I'm also on the Environmental Commission, and I wanted to speak to the plastic ordinance, that I'm in full support of it. I also want to say I spent some time in Connecticut this summer, and I saw it go into action there. Didn't seem to be any problems. Everybody got along well with it. Those plastic bags that you're buying, they're not single-use bags. They're thicker. You're meant to take them and shop with them again and again and again. So it's not like those little thin ones you get from CVS when you get your prescription and it's in paper and then they stick it in the plastic and you have double bags. And it's not like that bag at all. It's meant to be used again and again. So I just wanted to bring that up. So
Thank you very much. Okay, if no one else is coming forward, I'm closing the floor to the public, and we're going to the introduction of ordinances that Mr. Cruz just explained to us a few minutes ago, about an hour, a couple hours ago. And was that a couple hours? And so let's start with the first one, Ordinance 2019-14 Development Fee Ordinance. Now, do I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Anyone second it?
Mr. Mayor, if you would second, you have to read the ordinance by title, so read the title of the ordinance.
Okay. All right, so an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 29, titled Affordable Housing of the Revised General Ordinances to add a new subsection 29-2 titled Development Fees. That's the ordinance we talked about as far as the fees. So did I have a second, or?
I will second it.
Thank you. And now time for committee discussion. It was explained by Mr. Cruz. And will anyone from the committee make any comments on that?
I will make a comment or two. As we have said many times, there is no mistaking that every expenditure that we are seeing in this affordable housing paradigm that we've been dealing with since about 2014 here in Chatham Township comes with an expense to the taxpayers of our township. And we have sat here, it feels like since time eternal, discussing the ins and outs, the small points and large points, the trends and nuances, and the penumbras of all of this, and how to avoid it, how to deal with it, how to comply with it, how to seek the best resolution for 4,000 families in this township, 4,000 households, 4,000 sets of taxpayers, you name it. This is, as Ms. Estevez said, correctly pointing out that it is a fee to the homeowners, without a doubt. It comes with every time you improve your kitchen, every time you have an addition built, every time you create an additional rateable for Chatham Township, there is going to be an added fee. And we have had this item on our books for a long time. We have not enacted it. We have actually not been faced with writing a check to anybody until coming up in the very near future, at which point we're going to have to figure out who's paying for this. And as I have said many, many times, among the biggest threats we face as an independent community are the mandates coming down to us from Washington, the mandates coming to us from Trenton, the mandates coming down to us, yes, even from Morristown, our county seat. So here we are left with a project that we are going to force to be ponying up for, and where is the money coming from? If we take all of the monies that are required from us and spread them out over 4,000 households, you know what, perhaps that's considered unfair. At least people, we know they're making conscientious efforts to improve their homes. They know they're adding to the values of their homes. They know they are going to be increasing their tax burdens a bit because they're adding to the values of their homes. Developers are going to be feeling the same equation. So while, yes, you are correct, it is an additional fee to certain segments of our township population, and while we are loath to do that, we are loath to levy additional taxes, additional fees, and lay them at the doorsteps of our taxpayers, I'm afraid that it has to be done. And I'm afraid that we are caught between a rock and a hard place in this lovely community, and we are forced to pony up for it somehow. So while I don't care for this one bit, it's here for us. We have to come up with the funds somehow. And so that's my opinion on it. That's why I've seconded the motion. That's why I've requested to have this as part of the conversation many, many times, when we are going to, how we are going to implement these fees, and here it is right now.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else from the committee would like to make any comments?
I think it's important to note that nobody wants to pay more money. But when you talk about collecting revenue, there is an expense. Expenses that we occur with our Vernon Grove units. We had to repave the driveway. We had to fix the roof. We had to pay our planner, Frank Banish, $40,000 to put an affordable housing component into our master plan. That's what these developer fees were designed to do. So one way or another, we're all paying for them. So whether it's coming out of the budget and taking away from other projects that we could be doing, like resurfacing our tennis courts or doing something else that would be positive for the community, we are paying these expenses, and they are not insignificant. So we are an anomaly in Chatham Township, that we have not adopted these developer fees back when this started to happen. Back in the 2006-2007 time, and Albert, I don't know when this was officially adopted but not implemented at the time, but over this time period when we've experienced extraordinary redevelopment with the tear downs and the rebuilds, that money could have been gone into coffers to pay for these things that we're paying for out of the budget. So yeah, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball right now because we paid these costs, and now we're going to have more costs associated with the affordable housing development. But we have no money. So had we looked forward like many other towns did and enacted this a long time ago, we would be in much better shape. And now, as Karen said, we're really all forced to do this because we do need to offset our costs. And it's unfortunate that we do, but that's the place that we're in right now.
I will say that as far as having gone back in time to start building a war chest for expenses we had no way of predicting, in my mind, would have been and has always been ill-advised. For us to have started collecting these fees with no way of knowing where we were spending them or how we were spending them, to me, is the misuse of taxpayer dollars. We're not going to build a war chest for expenses that have not landed at our doorstep until now. So I will take exception to that, to the criticism of any not enacting a tax, not enacting fees without having a designated reason for spending them. We knew we were going to have a time where we would have to spend them. The time is now. The time was not in 2006. So to think that we should have been taxing our taxpayers before, I will certainly take exception to.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I may just make a comment. Sure. This is a procedural motion to introduce the ordinance. On October 24th, you will have a public hearing. You will have public comment and further debate. But right now, you're not voting on the merits of this ordinance. You're simply voting to introduce it, to go to the next step of a public hearing and hearing the public and having the debate.
Okay.
Was it appropriate to ask for discussion then, or?
No, it was appropriate. I'm just pointing out that you're not voting on it substantively tonight. That is just to put it essentially on the table, to authorize the clerk to advertise and hold a public hearing on October 21st, to refer it to the planning board, all procedural items that need to be done before you can have the full discussion.
Okay, so anyone else, anything else from the committee?
So I was going to say the same thing, that the public hearing, when the audience will, most likely interested people will be in the audience to ask questions, and certainly listen to explanations, will be at that final adoption and public hearing. So I will postpone any comments until then.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so committee discussion ends, and a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Slin?
Yes.
Motion to introduce has passed, and the public hearing will be on October the 24th.
October 20th. Thank you, Greg. And the next one is Ordinance 2019-15, Affordable Housing Ordinance. I'm going to read the heading. It's a long one. An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, repealing Chapter 29 titled Affordable Housing of the Revised General Ordinances and replacing with a new Chapter 29 titled Affordable Housing to address the requirements of the Fair Housing Act, FHA, and the Uniform Housing Affordability Controls, UHAC, regarding compliance with the Township's affordable housing obligations. So this ordinance is here to be introduced, and do I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Anyone would like to second it?
Second.
Second, great. Committee discussion. Anyone has any comments? If not, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
And Mayor Selin.
Yes.
Motion passes to introduce, and the public hearing will also be on October the 24th.
Okay, great, thank you. And now I'm going on to the resolutions. We have two resolutions. Resolution number 1 is 2019-174, affirmative marketing plan. And I will read the heading. If I can find it. Right here, okay. All right, Resolution 2019-174, a resolution of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending its affirmative marketing plan pursuant to New Jersey Uniform Housing Affordability Controls, UHAC, and the commitment to affirmative marketing of affordable housing. All right, so we're introducing those resolutions. Do I have a motion to introduce?
Mr. Mayor?
We're just passing.
This is actually a substantive vote. It's not a procedural vote. You are voting on the substance of this resolution to adopt it tonight.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, these resolutions will be voted on separately rather than as a consent agenda. Each one will have a separate motion for adoption.
We're starting with the 174, then we'll go to 175. Okay.
Can I just make ask a question? When it talks about the various ways of advertising and pointing out to potential candidates, et cetera, it lists the Chatham Independent Press here, which I don't believe exists anymore. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
So, the Courier is the only actual print newspaper that's available to us?
What about the Chatham News?
The Chatham News, I don't think is an official publication.
Not an official.
Been here 13 years, I've never heard of the Chatham News.
Chatham Courier?
Chatham Courier, man.
Chatham Courier, yes, absolutely.
And is
Right
that-
there.
Has always been our
And
paper
is
of
that
record.
on there?
The Chatham Courier is on here, but also the Chatham Independent
Then my
Press.
suggestion is move to amend the resolution to delete that, and the clerk will strike that.
And is it appropriate to try and find another publication? The Daily Record is on here, is that good enough?
Yeah, the Daily Record is one of your official publications.
Okay, so that leaves
the
us with-
Chatham Courier
It
With
also
two.
notes the Star Ledger.
and the Star Ledger, yes. And Mr. Hoffman also points out that one of the radio stations is off the air, so we can strike that. What is that, WP? WPOJ.
Oh, rest in peace.
So those two items can be just removed from the agenda, so move the resolution with those two items deleted.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussions? And roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Selin.
Yes.
Motion passes to adopt the resolution with those corrections.
Thank you. And the next resolution is 2019-175, appointing municipal housing liaison.
What, you don't want the job?
Motion to
It
adopt.
sounds like a lot of fun.
All right, resolution 2019-175.
Motion to approve?
Actually, let's, the mayor, did you read the title yet?
I'm just doing it. I'm trying to do it. So, I gotta do this. Resolution 2019-175, a resolution of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, appointing a municipal housing liaison. Do I have a motion to? Okay.
Motion.
So
Motion.
moved, so
Motion
moved, so
to
moved,
approve.
so moved.
Anyone second?
Second.
Committee discussion.
Can't think of a better man for the job.
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Solin?
Yes.
The motion has been adopted.
Passes, okay, perfect. And the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Routine items that may be passed by a single roll call vote. Any committee member may call for a separate discussion or vote on any item. Greg, would you please read those items?
Resolution 2019-176, payment of bills. 2019-177, approving meeting minutes. 2019-178, approving executive session minutes. 2019-179, there was a misprint on there, 179, authorizing ACH withdrawals. 2019-180, releasing escrow balances. And 2019-181, accepting snow plowing services proposal.
Okay.
May I just ask a question about the ACH?
That's, yes,
Question?
you can. No, I mean, I was going to ask, committee discussion will come, but that's fine, you can do that.
Is there going, I know if you pay your taxes online, that's what I'm assuming this is all about, and sewer bill. There is a surcharge, a convenience charge, or whatever it is when you pay online. Is this going to be now waived by using ACH, or is there still going to be a convenience charge on top of?
I think this is for payroll.
No, this is a.
This is for withdrawals. Does it apply to taxpayers paying their taxes and sewer bill?
If I understand correctly, this is for taxpayers to set up automatic payments from their checking account to pay their property taxes. It's
Right.
something that they would have to voluntarily sign up for.
Right.
I don't know the specifics of this program, but when I pay my rent through ACH, there's no service charge.
Right.
Service charges are usually when you're paying by credit card.
Right, well, when you pay your taxes online right now, there's a convenience charge. It might not be much, but my
That's
question
because
is.
you're paying by credit card.
I don't pay.
No, I think if you take it out of your checking account, they charge it too. That's how I do it. I don't think it's an egregious amount, but I'm just wondering whether whether there's going to be a fee.
I don't have it.
Well, typically, if there's a charge, the taxpayer would pay it.
No kidding.
No, I'm serious. I mean, if you want the convenience of paying by credit card or some other method, and if the
Right.
your bank charges, that's who pays for it, the customer.
No, I'm asking, when I go online to pay my taxes using an ACH now, is there going to be a charge? But I guess we haven't decided that yet.
People would still be able to come down to visit us during business hours with a check or a cash and, pay the old-fashioned way without any additional fees.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
So
Greg,
the
roll
answer
call
is we
vote,
don't
please.
have an answer.
Did we have a motion and a second?
Didn't we have a motion and second?
Motion to approve?
Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Committee discussion? Oh, that's right,
we
that's
just-
when you start discussing.
Well, I can continue to discuss it, 'cause I still didn't get an
You should have waited till the
answer.
committee discussion. Now, do you have any comments?
I just am curious to know about whether there's going to be a
Any
service
comments?
charge.
I
to
will-
Yes,
the
Bob
ACH.
has comments, hold on.
If we will get you an answer
Thank you.
tomorrow, but what drove this is we have had requests from our residents asking if they could, we have a program similar to this, and we had not had that before. The state has statutes that govern this, so we want to be able to give this option to our residents. We will
Okay.
give you an answer tomorrow about the
Okay, yeah,
fees.
because you can pay online. You can go online and pay your quarterly property taxes online, but you can pay by credit card, you can pay by direct withdrawal from your bank account. But both of them come with a convenience fee. So my question is, will this new program continue to charge a convenience fee?
I believe it will, but we'll get you the answer.
Thanks.
Okay, now roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Solid?
Yes,
The motion passes. Thank you.
thank you. All right, now we have two discussion items. Item number one is the amending direct deposit requirements. Okay,
Mr. Mayor, if I can give a
Sure.
background on that. I spoke about that in the administrator's report, and that's just, there's basically, we're asking the Township Committee to take two words out of the ordinance, and those two words are seasonal employees. So seasonal employees They have checking accounts or savings accounts, and we would make a payment to their checking account or their savings account. Temporary employees would still have the option of receiving a paper check, but this just helps make sure that the money gets where it's supposed to get and it doesn't get lost, as I had said before. So if the township, and I had envisioned that we would be able to introduce that ordinance at the next meeting, but if the township committee wishes, it can be introduced tonight.
I was going to ask, are you seeking the consensus, or are you seeking us to introduce it, or?
If the township committee wishes, it can be introduced tonight.
I
or
am
can
for
be-
it. Yeah, I would like to introduce it if everyone is okay with it. Do I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Second.
Committee discussion? None. Roll call vote.
And I'll just quickly note that this is, as with the earlier ordinances, it's amending an existing ordinance, so we already have direct deposit in place. Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
And Mayor Sletton?
Yes.
The public hearing will be on September the 26th.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. The next item is the plastic bag regulations. So we had some comments from the public earlier, and now I'm opening up to the discussion first to the committee. So anyone would like to make any comments? I'm taking a different route on this.
Mr. Mayor, if I make a suggestion. The clerk rightly referred this draft ordinance to the Board of Health for their review. And the clerk did so because he also serves as the Board of Health Secretary. But as a practical matter, it is the health officer or the health official that will be enforcing this ordinance. So it was appropriate to get their input on this. That occurred last night. That was the next regularly scheduled, I'm sorry? Tuesday night. That rightly occurred Tuesday night. The board did authorize the health inspector or health officer to review the ordinance, make certain comments. You should have a draft of the ordinance with the comments made by the health inspector. And before you start your discussion, I would just like to go over those changes.
Sure, please.
And indicate to you which ones I would recommend that you make.
Albert, when you say changes, do you mean changes or suggestions or amendments, or are they actual changes to the?
You haven't introduced anything yet, so that's why you want to have the discussion first. There are actual changes that are put onto the draft, so you should have a.
So it's a draft is still a draft is a draft.
Correct.
So
It's
if
still
we
a draft.
introduce it, it will be introduced as amended if we choose to amend based on your comments.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the first comment made by the board is in section 3-13 in the heading. They're asking that the word certain plastic bags be inserted. The word certain would be new. I don't think that adds anything. The ordinance in and of itself describes what is being regulated, and certain doesn't add any certainty to the definition. And as a general rule, a heading doesn't govern the text of the ordinance. It's just simply a heading for informational purposes. So I do not recommend that change be made. The next change recommended is in 3-13.1, subsection 4, where the requirement is to take out the thickness of the paper bag. It is 10 mils that is included in the draft ordinance. I think that, and the reason for that, the board explains that stating a thickness would be difficult to measure. I think you have to have a standard. The ordinance, the draft ordinance proposes 10 mils. I think you need to have a standard. They also recommend that a specific manufacturer, that it be specifically designed and manufactured for multiple use should be accomplished, should be included. Again, I think a 10 mil thickness should remain as is, and I would not recommend that change because you do need to have a standard. Their next change that's recommended is in section 3-13.2. It is the second paragraph there regarding that effective, and this ordinance, if you decide to adopt it, does not become effective until March 1, 2020, to allow for a period of public education. So the ordinance here provides, as drafted, that single-use plastic carryout bags may not be distributed on Township of Chatham property or at Township-sponsored events. The comment there is that typically the inspections here would be done as part of any inspection of any store. Typically, there are no inspections at Township-sponsored events or on Township property, so it would become an item that is difficult to enforce. And I agree with that. It would be difficult to enforce, but I think what can be put in its place, that Township property and Township-sponsored events, that there be some educational materials or a way to educate individuals attending those functions to know the benefits of not using plastic reusables. The next change is to section 3-13.6, adding in the heading notice, so that section would read notice, enforcement, and violation penalty, and I think that is an appropriate change. In that same section, it talks about the Township of Chatham Health Officer, REHS, or authorized Health Department staff member, has the responsibility for enforcement, so that designates who is enforcing this. And I agree with that. The only comment I would have there is to not just use the initials REHS, but to use
Registered Environmental Health Specialist.
to use that title so everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, which it's what's commonly referred to as a health inspector, but Registered Environmental Health Specialist is the appropriate jargon for the title.
So we should use the appropriate title, not just initials. The next comment to subsection 3, I'm not sure I understand it, and I would like to speak with the Board of Health. I think what they're trying to say there is that the violation shall occur as a result of a notice of violation or a summons being issued. All municipal ordinances are not automatic. You issue a summons. Well, in this case, you would first issue a notice of violation, and then of the potential for summonses. But all ordinances are enforced through the municipal court after a hearing and due process. So the ordinance has to be modified to allow that, and you just simply say, here's, you're found in violation, pay the fine. There is a summons associated with it. So I need to clarify with the health officer what the specific comment that is being made there. In subsection 4, they're asking, and I think a very important item, and that is when some summonses require a municipal court appearance. On some summons, you can just simply pay the fine and no one has to appear, neither the health officer nor the individual being fined. What the health officer is asking that the ordinance be clarified to not require a municipal court appearance, that if the person wishes to pay the fine, they can do so. I would need to speak to the municipal court administrator to make sure that that is properly worded and goes on their schedule as something that does not require a municipal court appearance, and that the fine can simply be paid. There are a couple of changes that are recommended to the amount of the penalty. They're not included in the ordinance, but the clerk does have, can report to you what the Board of Health said about the penalties. And obviously, penalties are a policy matter. It's something for you to decide what level of penalty you decide to impose. And remember that any ordinance can be amended at a later date if you so desire.
And to follow up on that with the fines, a recommendation that the health officer made at the Board of Health meeting was that instead of having
That's okay.
instead of having a minimum fine of $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second, and $500 thereafter, Mr. Fitzpatrick recommended that the initial fine be $500 and be a range of $500 to $2,000, which that would also play into the question of whether or not court appearances would be required. But rather than being $100 to $500, he suggested starting with $500 and going from there up to the $2,000.
Did he have any reason why they wanted to raise it so much?
He didn't state, but if you want this ordinance to actually mean something, sometimes stiffer penalties are more of a.
I think that's more than
more of a
I think
deterrence.
that's more than our tree ordinance.
Well, again, I think the question really is, what do you want to do?
That's,
Enforce a penalty or have compliance? And so.
We want to have compliance, not over penalize.
But again, that's a policy decision for you.
Okay, so
I
that's,
could-
that's a recommendation from the health officer.
But I could guess that part of his rationale might be that since the three people or the three organizations that this ordinance would really affect would be Ace Hardware, CVS, and ShopRite, $100 fines probably not going to scare them all that much. $500 they'll notice a little bit more.
They have CVS and ShopRite and major retailers are already experiencing all of this in New York, Connecticut, Delaware, the 55 towns that have already passed it. So they just flip over to their new program.
Yeah, from the conversation that you and I had over the weekend, it sounds like they're equipped to make the change as is. So hopefully we won't have to be issuing
Just
fines.
seems a little
but
draconian, especially for our small business people.
Let's follow through the process. I mean, we kind of changed it a little bit, but let's do the committee discussion. So we started already, and with the amendments, proposed amendments, and anyone would like to make any comments on this proposed introduction of the ordinance?
Yes.
Or ordinance itself?
I would like to commend the Environmental Commission and all of the towns that have participated in the North Jersey Sustainable Coalition. It's been a long slog. The presentation that you gave in June was terrific, gave a lot of great input. It looked at the pros and the cons. And I did some research over the summer, thinking about how are we going to deal with this. And I read our master plan. And it's consistent with our master plan, goals for conservation, which includes promoting environmental restoration or improvement projects, public involvement in protecting critical resources, ensure greater protection of water resources, including the Great Swamp, through regulatory and educational programs. It also calls to improve pollution avoidance so as not to degrade water quality and initiate preventive or mitigating action. And that's directly out of our master plan. And the master plan guides what we're supposed to be doing in the township. It was disappointing, though not surprising, to see what the Great Swamp Watershed Association, and I've passed out a copy of this if it makes its way down to you, that this isn't some amorphous thing. This isn't what we see on TV where plastic bags are being taken out of dolphins and whales and it looks terrible, or on the nightly news where they're cutting open fish that are being supplied to markets and there's microplastics in them. You can say, oh, we're not by the shoreline or we're not by here. It's here. They've done a sampling of 17 locations, and it is in the Passaic River in Basking Ridge, in Stanley Park, in the Lewanika Brook, in the Passaic River Park in Chatham, the Passaic River Bridge at Bridge Avenue, Passaic River in Berkeley Heights, and in Blackbrook. So there's 3 different levels of microplastics. There's chips, which is things that come from plastics and bottles and things that break down. There's film, and then there's fibers, which come from clothing fibers and things that get in the waterways. And so the microplastics that we're talking about specifically with plastic bags are film. And there, by and large, film and fibers are the largest polluters in these sample sections for what is the waterways around Chatham Township. And we have been leaders in environmental stewardship. It's one of the monikers that we hang our hat on, that we are an environmental town, that 25% of Chatham Township lies in the Great Swamp, that we participate actively with the Great Swamp Watershed Association. We actually have a former mayor sitting on the board of trustees of the Great Swamp Watershed Association. All of the Great Swamp Watershed Association, ANJAC, all of our major environmental groups are coming forward and saying, please take this step. It's here. It's in our water. And I would very much like to see us take this step. I think that you all have done a very good job. We attended a meeting in Madison with over 100 people, different municipalities, residents who came in to learn about what limiting the use of plastic bags are. And it's just continuing on down the line. Chatham Borough is going to introduce in September. Madison is going to introduce at the end of the week or the beginning of next week. New Providence is introducing. Berkeley Heights is in discussions and getting ready to introduce in October. Milburn has already passed its first round of this ordinance. Harding is introducing in October. So we will be amongst a whole group of towns where all of us shop. I don't know if, like you, I go and get various things from various towns. And it would be great if we could be part of this coalition that's moving forward with environmental stewardship. I think the plastic bag ban, unfortunately you guys don't have copies of it, but there's common sense to this. So it doesn't include when you carry out food from a retail establishment or a food establishment. It doesn't include bulk pack items, fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, unwrapped prepared foods or bakery goods, takeout foods intended from consumption away from the retail establishment. So I think when you get to understand what exactly a single-use plastic bags are, they're the ones that are stuck in the trees when we all drive around, and they're the ones that are causing the problem. So that's what we're targeting. And those are my comments. So I'd like to see us continue with our environmental stewardship, continue with the suggestions from the GWSA, or Great Swamp, GSWA, ANJAC, adhere to our master plan and the goals that it sets forth for all of us, and be a leader and make that change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee?
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to see this introduced tonight. I'd like to thank our Environmental Commission for the leadership role it's been taking with this coalition of towns. I think that it's the momentum is here clearly. It's the 55 New Jersey towns plus entire states nearby in Connecticut and New York.
Delaware.
I think that the penalties should remain as originally drafted, starting with a warning the first time and then starting with $100 after that and then growing from there. I think this is very much of a educational exercise and not a punitive exercise. And as our attorney said, we can amend it down the road if need be. But I think that this is a case where leadership on our part as a township committee can help get the message across to our residents that about the better way to do things, and it can accomplish change behavior that's not just environmental, it's not just aesthetic, it's very, very much a health issue. I think that when Tracy read off all those places where they literally have found microplastics in our Passaic water, I mean, what hammers that point home is that it is downstream from all those points where we get our water from. The New Jersey American Water Company pulls the water that we drink. So this is very much affects us directly. So I would support introducing this tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Anyone else from the committee you would like to?
I am completely opposed to one more ounce of government overreach here and anywhere else. Once again, our just basic right to go to the grocery store is now being mitigated by some regulation, some liberal arrogance that says that they are going to penalize, fine, regulate, as opposed to education, which we have already said is working. You read the whole master plan to us. The last resort in that master plan is regulation. You've spoken about education. You've spoken about changing people's way of doing things. People are smart. Chatham Township residents are smart. We have already heard tonight that many more places than around here are the ones who are egregiously treating our environment. Because around here, we tend to do the right thing. We don't throw our plastic bags in the water. We don't throw them in the trees. We dispose of things appropriately. Where our plastic bags are recyclable, we recycle them. We have talked in wonderment about how many bags we have recycled, how many thousands of pounds it takes to make a bench, and how many benches we have done it, and who gets to have the recycling accommodations at their church next, because people are proud to do the right thing. People are proud to recycle where they can. It says here in this draft ordinance that 5% or fewer single-use carry-out bags are actually recycled. Well, that's all well and good. We would recycle more if we had the opportunity here. Our MUA does not do that. However, we do use over and over again single-use plastic bags. I don't throw plastic bags out, frankly. I'm like the people here who have a car full of reusable bags, and I use them. I am 100% opposed to waste. I am opposed to throwing things out. People who describe here in this ordinance all single-use carry-out plastic bags are wasteful. Who is describing wasteful to us? Our government is now describing wastefulness to us. What if I reuse my bag? What if I have a pet that I clean up after? What if I line my own garbage cans with a bag I took home from ShopRite? We have 560 some odd municipalities in the state of New Jersey, and for us to rattle off a couple of score towns and municipalities that have enacted regulations such as this, created laws, created legislations, is not impressive to me out of 560 municipalities. Instead, we are looking at a small, liberal group of people who would rather regulate than educate, who would rather put into place a law over actual re-education. Whereas proper use of good government, I would submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that good government is not to regulate how somebody goes to ShopRite and brings their groceries home. We have important tasks here. We are working on things such as millions and millions of dollars of impact to our Chatham Township budget here because of what I consider, once again, governmental overreach. And we have big fish to fry in this township, and whether we're going to walk into ShopRite and levy them with a $100 fine because they handed out a bag to a person to bring home a box of cereal in, to me is just the absolute wrong route for government to go. The fact that the store gets to keep the 10 cents per bag is baffling to me. The store is going to keep 10 cents per bag that we will gladly hand over so that they can educate people. Well, stores are educating people every day. We here are educating people every day. Every one of us likes to do the right thing. We teach our kids not to throw litter in the streets, not to throw litter out our car windows. Whether there's a fine on a plastic bag for walking into ShopRite or not has nothing to do with whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And I can go on, and I will at some point in time. I'm not going to take up any more of your time because I think you already know that I feel this is a bad use of our local government. That's not what we do. And when Ms. Estevez over here calls out Republicans on this board, when we ran for election, we ran on smaller government, we ran on lower taxes, fewer regulations. And you know what? And we're sitting here because we voted, we ran on those principles. We ran on conservative principles, we ran on lower government. We didn't run, except for one of us who ran on max the tax. Most of us actually did not. So for us to levy even more regulations, fines, fees, etc., on our citizens is against what I believe in, it's against what Republicans believe in, it's against what conservatives believe in, and I will vote not to introduce this, and I will not support it if it is so introduced.
Thank you, Karen. And did you want to say something?
Of course.
No,
I think
let's-
it's an
very brief,
anathema to the governing and what's happening. I think this is kind of a microcosm, Karen's comments about what's happened to our township government. Environmental stewardship, water safety, our health, the things that I stated to you that are explicitly stated in our master plan are not liberal or conservative. They're not Democrat or Republican. They're meant to guide, they're guiding principles of how to manage our resources that we hold very dear in Chatham Township. And I think it's absolutely, it's offensive, actually, to hear the words, oh, that's a liberal thing, and get all yelly about it, and oh, that's a Republican thing, and it's a conservative thing, and it's not. It's the health of the waterways in our town. It is the health of the waterways in other towns as it impacts downstream. It'll impact me eventually if those waters, if those microplastics are coming down into the water that comes out of my tap. So to take this into the very base level of hyper-partisan politics when we're talking about our township and our waterways is extraordinarily disappointing, not unexpected. So I'm going to stick with our master plan. I'm going to stick with the goals that we have as a township, as residents who live in the Great Swamp, where 25% of our land is in the Great Swamp. And I'm going to stick with that, regardless of whether it's partisan or nonpartisan. I'm going to take that hat off, which I actually don't really wear, and I'm going to be for the township.
Mrs. Ness, you missed my point 100%.
I
You
unfortunately did
missed
not.
my point 100%. This is legislation. This is legislation over human behavior. This is not about what is right and what is wrong. This is not about what is good stewardship and what is bad stewardship.
Sure it is.
That comes from the heart, that comes from education, that comes from teaching our children not to disrespect the
So
environment.
then tell me what
You
the
want to
base
enact
ordinance
legislation
everyone.
to teach people to do the right thing.
Please.
Enacting legislation is not the way to go.
Please, hold on, please respect each other. And Karen, listen to you. Tracy, you listen to her. Please, one at a time. So, did you finish? If you didn't, please finish.
I'm finished.
Okay. Tracy, did you finish your comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may interrupt, and I apologize, but again, I'm asking for direction here.
Sure.
With respect to whether or not you believe the changes that were recommended by the Board of Health should be made to the draft ordinance. We're not even yet to introduction because there are two issues that I raised with you that I think I need further clarification from the board. One is, and not even from the board, from the municipal court administrator, to find out whether or not where this ordinance would fit in the schedule of violations. And I thought your preference was to make sure that this goes on the schedule of violations where no court appearance is necessary, is required, and that you can make the payment, pay the fine without a court appearance. So I think before you go further on this, that you give me some direction on that, whether or not the changes recommended by the board are acceptable. I indicated to you which ones are not, but I certainly need time to speak to the court administrator and get this issue resolved. It didn't get resolved today because the comments didn't come in until approximately 5 o'clock. So my suggestion is give me some direction, give the clerk direction, and then be able to present a clean draft ordinance to you at the next meeting, and then you can debate the merits of it.
Okay. So now, as I said in the beginning of the discussion, that if we introduce this ordinance tonight, and we're going to introduce it as amended based on your comments, so my understanding that no one from the committee is against your comments. I think your comments are valid comments, and so...
But you can't introduce it because the change is not here. And between introduction and adoption, you can't make any substantive or material changes. So I would, otherwise you have to start the ordinance process again. You'd have to start the notice process, and you basically have to start again. So my suggestion is, give me the direction you desire, come back in 2 weeks, introduce the ordinance if that's your pleasure at that point, but with a clean ordinance incorporating all the comments and answering the questions. Otherwise, you introduce it tonight, I get the answers in 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, you have a public hearing, but you're going to have to amend the ordinance again and start the process again.
I don't believe we're going to have the public hearing until October because of agenda items for September. So the pending issue is whether or not they would pay directly.
But again, I want to speak to the court administrator, make sure that it's set up in the right way, so the court administrator addresses it in the way that you desire to be addressed.
And if it's not, we can't make that amendment in the second reading? You
can make an amendment, but if it's a material amendment or substantive amendment, in my opinion now, and it will be in a month, is that that is a material substantive change requiring the ordinance to be restarted.
And if it comes back as not going to not having to go through?
Then we would put that right in the ordinance that you...
It just stays as it is?
No.
If I can advocate for what I need to do, if you introduce tonight, I need to publish the ordinance, and I can publish it until we have a clean draft. So I would suggest waiting until you have a clean draft to introduce it, so that way you can, because it may not be for another 2 weeks before it's published, and chances are your public hearing's going to have to be in October anyway. So
yeah, it's going to be in
you might as well just wait till the next meeting, introduce then when you have a clean copy, if it winds up being the vote of the committee to introduce.
I think it sounds fair. And then, then we're going to direct you to, we're accepting your changes. And
there are two sets here. The Board of Health Inspector made certain recommendations. I agreed with some, didn't agree with others, needed clarification on a third one. So I will follow.
Why don't you clarify that and come back to us with that? Okay.
May I ask a question about the makeup of the Board of Health? With our board president resigning, I don't know when that's effective. We have word on our health inspector as well. Our health inspector, as it stands now, is required to cover how many towns, Greg?
I believe Madison, the REHS, they cover 4 towns.
4 towns. So we've got one health inspector trying to make sure that we've got 4 towns worth of restaurants and everything else.
But this is not going to materially increase the workload of the inspector. He is doing this as part of his normal inspections.
The idea that the board is in flux doesn't have any impact on this?
You're going to have an interlocal services agreement with the Board of Health to provide these services for you.
And the fact that our board president is stepping down, leaving the vacancy.
The agreement is still there. And so what you want
to... The agreement is not with the Board of Health.
Actually it is.
It's the medicine.
The Chatham Township Board of Health has contracted with the Madison Board of Health for the provision of health department services from the Madison Health Department. That contract, as I have explained to other people recently, it was our Board of Health that approved that contract after negotiating with the Madison Board of Health. To that end, one of the reasons I brought this to the Board of Health for discussion was the question of whether or not this was going to affect how much the township has to pay Madison for additional services. The health officer has assured me that there will not be a cost increase. Part of the rationale of having the REHS or health officer enforce this is that they're in the stores doing inspections anyway, so it's one more thing on their checklist to look for. But that's why one of his recommendations was foregoing the township-sponsored events because, if there's a Chatham United tournament, there's not going to be a health inspector there. They are going to be going to ShopRite. They are going to be going to CVS, so that makes sense. But, if we want to keep our costs under control, we don't want to start requiring a health officer at something where there's really no reason for a health officer to attend.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Okay, so we have the consensus as to what to do next. Okay. Now, hearing of citizens.
Just one last thing, and the reference to who enforces it is a generic reference. So whoever has the contract or the ability to enforce, to serve in that capacity, that's who would be enforcing it.
And to elaborate on that, I believe our contract with Madison extends through the year 2021. We've been going with Madison as long as I've been here. They've been multi-year contracts, but come the renewal period, the Board of Health could opt to go with another provider. So, that's why it's by title rather than specific department.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, and it was a great discussion. Public hearing of citizens. Anyone would like to make comments? Sure, please introduce yourself, please.
Hello again. Rez Estevez from Southern Boulevard. Again, on the conservation environmental notes, it's an area to which I have dedicated my life and a portion of my professional life past 5 years of study in an environmental science program at Rutgers University. So that's been my background on that. As a point of clarification, microplastics result from plastic bottles, not from plastic shopping bags. So again, there is a need for further understanding of the issue and aiming to do good in addition to feeling good. If the objective of the ordinance is to guide and educate, which are laudable goals, I'm not sure that lawmaking is the best vehicle to achieve that. So I wanted to make sure that there was clarity on what the objectives are so that indeed we are aiming and actually implementing those objectives using a right-sized tool for it. The idea of punishing the largest businesses and retailers in the township, ShopRite, CVS, and Ace, with a ban of this nature, just to me does not seem to be a good idea, especially since there's scientific data and metrics, reports, and studies indicating that as fashionable as these plastic bag bans can be, their efficacy is limited. So again, I point the committee to dig further and think about what is truly the objective, to grow government or to actually guide and educate so that our well-doing township residents do the right thing, recycle their bags at the ShopRite, reuse their bags in their trash liners or picking up after pets, or stinky diapers, as will happen in some households in our township, because they're multi-use bags is what the reality is, and either we're going to buy them because we need to use them, using plastics that are thicker in the reusable plastic bags, or simply really pursue the education and guidance to our fellow neighbors. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I just wanted to correct something, though. There actually are 3 groups of microplastics. Yeah, not just one. So there's 3 groups: chips, film, and fibers. And film is the degradation of the single-use plastic bags, which is what's currently in our waterway. I can give you the.
That's great, and you know, that
Great
actually
Swamp
reinforces a point that I was making, that
Watershed
plastics derive,
Association data.
right, plastics, debris, and pollution in the environment derive from multiple sources.
Yeah.
And you can't attribute it to specifically one and demonize that one source and kind of not consider the others. So in social media, there's been a lot of discussion on how to rightly recycle. And actually, I've learned a lot from those discussions, and that's always very welcome. So again, I ask for further cool-headed fact-finding. Thank you again.
Next.
Hi,
person, please.
Jessica Romeo, 49 Pine Street. You know, the Great Swamp Watershed Association, of which Kevin Sullivan, a former mayor from our township, sits on the Board of Trustees, just went through this lengthy process of studying our waterways and taking samples. And like Tracy just said, the plastics we found in our original study were divided into 3 groups: chips, which come from larger plastics such as water and soda bottles; film, broken down from items such as single-use plastic bags; and fibers, which enter the water from the breaking down of synthetic fabrics as they go through the wash. There's no debating that these single-use plastic bags, which are very thin and flimsy and tear all the time, they are single-use bags. They are not multi-use bags. You can't carry a gallon of milk home in that plastic bag more than once without compromising that bag. These things break down. They're in my drinking water. I'm drinking them. They're in the fish I'm eating them. I don't want to leave this to my children. We owe it to our future generations. We owe it to all of ourselves to not drink this contaminated water. This is a health issue. It's not a liberal agenda. It's a health issue. It's a real issue. If we screw up our drinking water, there's nothing left for us. We need to do what we can do to protect that resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come forward? Now it's your time.
Hi, how are you? Jennifer McNally, 19 Ferndale Road. I just wanted to point out to some people who may not be regular attendees of these meetings, and maybe people who are watching at home, it was mentioned here that people are opposed to government overreach, and it's basically right to go to the grocery store. I remember sitting in these meetings about 6 months to a year ago when we discussed the potential for marijuana legislation being passed by the state of New Jersey. And that bill has not even been passed. It hasn't even been discussed yet in Trenton, but yet we spent 6 or 7 hours here in this very room passing legislation against having marijuana dispensaries in Chatham. So we went ahead and we did legislate, right, instead of educate people, but we spent 6 or 7 hours when we could have been discussing budgets and other things, millions of dollars and all these things about government overreach. We passed legislation for legislation that didn't even exist in the state yet. Legislation that we had a year as a township to then veto after it was passed. So we spent 6 or 7 or even more hours, I can go back and look at the video, all the videos, it was multiple meetings, about things like that. So to say that we're opposed to government overreach, we already overreached by passing legislation for legislation that didn't even exist. So, thank you. And as Jessica just said, we're leaving this legacy for our kids. It's in everyone's best interest. And maybe this plastic bag doesn't affect the water as strongly as it's been researched. Maybe we've got different numbers. But anything we can do as a town and as a community to leave it better for the next generation is what we need to do as a community. And set an example for our children, not set an example of bringing partisan politics into a discussion about the environment. Shame on that for coming into this discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, sounds like we don't have any other citizens, and so I am going to close the floor to the citizens, and we're going to go into the executive session in a few minutes. So now we have a resolution. Would you like to, Greg, read the resolution so we can start preparing to get into
Yes,
executive
it's
session?
Resolution 2019-P-16, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded, whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Potential litigation, Rolling Knolls landfill, personnel matter, Department of Public Works, collective bargaining negotiations, PBA. And Mr. Cruz, I believe we're already done with the fourth item? Yeah. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.